There is a version of you that people cannot provoke. A version of you that hears insults and stays unmoved, that faces disrespect and doesn't feel the need to react, that walks through chaos without carrying it inside. But right now, that version of you is buried under layers of emotional reactions you've been practicing for years. Because whether you realize it or not, most people are not in control of their emotions. They are conditioned by them. Someone says something small, and it ruins their entire day. Someone ignores them, and they start overthinking. Someone disagrees with them, and it turns into anger, frustration, or even silent resentment. And the worst part is, they think this is normal. They think reacting is natural. They think losing control is just being human. But here's the truth most people will never tell you. Every time you react without control, you are giving away power. You are allowing external situations and people to dictate your internal state. That means your peace is no longer yours. It belongs to whoever can trigger you the fastest. And in a world where people are unpredictable, emotional, and sometimes intentionally provocative, that is one of the most dangerous ways to live. Because it means you will always be at the mercy of things you cannot control. This is exactly where Stoicism changes everything. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions or pretending you don't feel anything. It's about mastering what you feel so it doesn't master you. It's about developing a level of awareness where you can experience anger without acting on it, where you can face negativity without absorbing it, and where you can stay grounded even when everything around you is unstable. It teaches you that the real battle is not outside, it's inside. Not against people, but against your own impulses, your own reactions, and your own interpretations of reality. Think about it carefully. What actually makes you angry? Is it what people do, or the meaning you attach to what they do? Is it the situation itself, or your interpretation of the situation? Two people can go through the exact same experience. One remains calm, the other loses control completely. The difference is not the situation. The difference is the mindset. And that means emotional control is not something reserved for a special kind of person, it is a skill. A trainable skill. One that, once developed, changes how you experience everything in your life. Imagine moving through life without constantly feeling triggered. Imagine being able to hear criticism without feeling attacked. Imagine being in situations where others lose control, yet you remain composed, observant, and intentional. That level of calm is not weakness, it is power in its purest form. Because when you cannot be easily disturbed, you become difficult to manipulate. When you are not controlled by anger, you make better decisions. And when your emotions are stable, your life becomes stable. In this video, you're going to learn 6 deeply transformative habits rooted in Stoic philosophy that will completely change the way you respond to people and situations. These are not quick tips or surface-level advice. These are mental frameworks that require practice, awareness, and discipline. But once they become part of you, they will reshape your entire reality. You will stop reacting impulsively. You will stop carrying unnecessary emotional weight. You will stop giving people control over your peace. And here's what you need to understand before we go any further. This is not something you try once and forget. This is something you commit to. Because the version of you that is calm, unbothered, and mentally strong is built through repetition, through awareness, and through daily effort. Most people will hear this and move on with their lives unchanged. But if you actually apply what you're about to learn, you won't just feel different, you will become different. So as you go through this, don't just listen. Pay attention. Reflect. Question your current reactions. Because by the end of this, you won't just understand why you get angry. You'll understand how to stop letting it control you completely. Open sidebar. ChatGPT. Free offer. You said? Write me a script for this topic for my channel, one that will attract and keep 1,000 new subscribers. Master these 6 habits, and you'll never be angry or bothered by anyone or anything. Stoicism. Make every point you give very lengthy from the introduction to the conclusion. Let each paragraph be more than 300 words. Remove part. Remember to number each point and make it lengthy. ChatGPT said, "Alright, this is a strong topic, but if you execute it poorly, it'll sound like every other stay calm video on YouTube. This needs depth, authority, and emotional pull. I'll give you a script that actually holds attention and converts viewers into subscribers." Introduction. There's a version of you that doesn't get triggered. A version of you that doesn't lose sleep over what people say, doesn't feel disrespected by every little thing, and doesn't carry anger like it's part of your identity. But right now, that version of you is buried under reactions, impulsive responses, emotional outbursts, and the constant need to prove a point. The truth is, most people don't control their emotions control them. Someone ignores their message, and it ruins their mood. Someone disrespects them, and they spend hours replaying it in their head. Someone succeeds, and it triggers insecurity. That's not strength, that's dependency. You're handing over your peace to people who don't even think about you. Stoicism teaches something radically different. It teaches that your peace is your responsibility. Not your friends, not your family, not strangers online, just you. And once you understand that, everything changes. You stop reacting. You start observing. You stop chasing validation. You start building internal stability. And that's what makes you powerful. Not loudness, not aggression, not proving people wrong, but control. Real control. In this video, I'm going to break down 6 powerful habits rooted in Stoic philosophy that will make you almost impossible to offend, disturb, or control. These are not surface-level tips. These are mindset shifts that, once mastered, will change how you see people, situations, and yourself. If you apply even 2 of these consistently, your life will feel lighter, calmer, and more intentional. But if you master all 6, you become untouchable. 1. Accept that you can't control people, only your response. Most anger comes from one false belief, that people should behave the way you expect them to. You expect respect, consistency, honesty, understanding, but reality doesn't operate on your expectations. People lie. People disappoint. People act out of insecurity, ego, and ignorance. And when they do, you get angry, not because of what they did, but because of the story in your head that says, they shouldn't have done that. This is where Stoicism flips everything. Instead of trying to control people, you shift your focus to the only thing you truly own, your response. You can't control how someone talks to you, but you can control how much it affects you. You can't control someone's attitude, but you can control whether you internalize it. When you deeply understand this, anger starts to lose its grip on you. Think about it. Why should someone else's lack of discipline, maturity, or awareness dictate your emotional state? Why should their behavior have the power to ruin your day? The moment you realize that your reaction is a choice, you reclaim your power. Not reacting is not weakness, it's discipline. It's choosing peace over chaos. It's understanding that reacting emotionally often gives people exactly what they want, control over you. So instead of asking, "Why are they like this?" start asking, "Why am I letting this affect me?" That question alone will change how you move through life. Because the goal is not to control the world, it's to control yourself within it. 2. Stop taking things personally. Here's the hard truth. Most things are not about you, but your mind makes it about you. Someone doesn't greet you, and you think they're disrespecting you. Someone gives criticism, and you feel attacked. Someone succeeds, and you feel threatened. But in reality, people are too consumed with their own lives, insecurities, and problems to be constantly thinking about you. When you take things personally, you give meaning to actions that may have nothing to do with you. And that meaning creates emotional reactions: anger, frustration, resentment. Stoicism teaches you to detach from that, to see things objectively, not emotionally. When someone insults you, what are they really showing? Their character, their mindset, their emotional state. It's a reflection of them, not you. But if you take it personally, you absorb their negativity and make it yours. That's a losing game. Imagine walking through life like a mirror instead of a sponge. A sponge absorbs everything, every insult, every negative comment, every bit of energy. But a mirror reflects, it doesn't hold on to anything. That's how you need to be. Let things pass through you without sticking. The moment you stop taking things personally, you become emotionally free. People lose the ability to provoke you. Their words become noise instead of weapons. And that's a dangerous level of peace, because now, nothing external can easily shake you. 3. Practice pausing before reacting. Most people don't have emotional control, they have emotional reflexes. Something happens, and they react instantly. No thinking, no awareness, just pure impulse. And that's where regret lives. Things said in anger, actions taken without thought, relationships damaged in seconds. Stoicism teaches the power of the pause. That small gap between stimulus and response is where your power lies. When something triggers you, instead of reacting immediately, you pause. You breathe. You observe what you're feeling without acting on it. That pause might be 5 seconds. It might be 10. But in that moment, you interrupt the automatic reaction. You give yourself space to choose a better response instead of defaulting to emotion. Anger is fast. Discipline is slow. And if you want to master your emotions, you have to slow down. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Will this matter tomorrow? Am I reacting or am I responding? When you build this habit, people will notice something different about you. You don't snap. You don't overreact. You don't escalate situations. And that makes you powerful. Because while others are controlled by their emotions, you're in control of yours. 4. Lower your expectations of people. This might sound negative, but it's actually freeing. The more you expect from people, the more you set yourself up for disappointment. You expect loyalty, consistency, understanding, but not everyone operates at your level. And when they fall short, you feel hurt, angry, or betrayed. Stoicism teaches you to see people as they are, not as you want them to be. When you lower unrealistic expectations, you stop being surprised by human behavior. You accept that people are flawed, inconsistent, and sometimes selfish. And instead of getting angry, you stay prepared. This doesn't mean you tolerate bad behavior. It means you're not emotionally shaken by it. You set boundaries, not expectations. You observe patterns, not promises. When you expect less, you appreciate more. You stop chasing validation. You stop depending on others for emotional stability. And most importantly, you protect your peace. Because the truth is, people will always do what aligns with their mindset. Your job is not to change them, it's to decide how much access they have to your life. 5. Focus on what truly matters. A lot of what you get angry about doesn't matter. It feels important in the moment, but in reality, it's insignificant. Someone's opinion, a minor inconvenience, a temporary setback. But because you're emotionally attached, it feels bigger than it is. Stoicism teaches you to zoom out, to look at the bigger picture. Will this matter in a week? A month? A year? Most of the time, the answer is no. When you focus on what truly matters, your goals, your growth, your purpose, you naturally stop giving energy to things that don't. You become selective with your emotions. You stop wasting time on drama, arguments, and distractions. Your energy is limited. Every time you get angry over something small, you're draining that energy. And that's energy you could have used to build your life, improve yourself, or move closer to your goals. So ask yourself, is this worth my peace? If the answer is no, let it go. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. 6. Train your mind daily. Emotional control is not something you achieve once, it's something you practice daily. Just like going to the gym builds your body, mental discipline builds your mind. If you don't train it, it weakens. And when it weakens, emotions take over. Stoicism is not just philosophy, it's practice. It's reflecting on your day. It's identifying where you reacted emotionally and where you could have responded better. It's reminding yourself of what you can and cannot control. You have to condition your mind to stay calm under pressure, to remain stable when things go wrong, to stay focused when distractions appear. Because the truth is, life will test you. People will test you. Situations will push your limits. And if you're not mentally prepared, you'll fall back into old patterns, anger, frustration, impulsive reactions. But if you train your mind daily, you build resilience. You build clarity. You build control. And over time, staying calm becomes your default, not your effort. Conclusion. If you've made it this far, understand this. Mastering these habits won't make you emotionless. It will make you powerful. You'll still feel anger, frustration, and disappointment, but you won't be controlled by them. You'll observe them, understand them, and choose how to respond. That's the difference between most people and disciplined individuals. Most people react. Disciplined people respond. And once you reach that level, life becomes lighter. You stop carrying unnecessary emotional weight. You stop being triggered by things that don't matter. You stop giving people control over your inner peace. That's what Stoicism gives you, not just calmness, but control. Not just patience, but power. If you want to become someone who is unbothered, focused, and mentally strong, start applying these habits today. Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient. Today. Because the version of you that is calm, disciplined, and unshakable is not built overnight, it's built daily. And once you become that person, nothing can disturb your peace again. You said, "This is not lengthy enough, now let's break it down section by section so it won't buck you and then you can make each point more lengthy. Give me the introduction." ChatGPT said. Introduction. There is a version of you that people cannot provoke. A version of you that hears insults and stays unmoved, that faces disrespect and doesn't feel the need to react, that walks through chaos without carrying it inside. But right now, that version of you is buried under layers of emotional reactions you've been practicing for years. Because whether you realize it or not, most people are not in control of their emotions. They are conditioned by them. Someone says something small, and it ruins their entire day. Someone ignores them, and they start overthinking. Someone disagrees with them, and it turns into anger, frustration, or even silent resentment. And the worst part is, they think this is normal. They think reacting is natural. They think losing control is just being human. But here's the truth most people will never tell you. Every time you react without control, you are giving away power. You are allowing external situations and people to dictate your internal state. That means your peace is no longer yours. It belongs to whoever can trigger you the fastest. And in a world where people are unpredictable, emotional, and sometimes intentionally provocative, that is one of the most dangerous ways to live. Because it means you will always be at the mercy of things you cannot control. This is exactly where Stoicism changes everything. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions or pretending you don't feel anything. It's about mastering what you feel so it doesn't master you. It's about developing a level of awareness where you can experience anger without acting on it, where you can face negativity without absorbing it, and where you can stay grounded even when everything around you is unstable. It teaches you that the real battle is not outside, it's inside. Not against people, but against your own impulses, your own reactions, and your own interpretations of reality. Think about it carefully. What actually makes you angry? Is it what people do, or the meaning you attach to what they do? Is it the situation itself, or your interpretation of the situation? Two people can go through the exact same experience. One remains calm, the other loses control completely. The difference is not the situation. The difference is the mindset. And that means emotional control is not something reserved for a special kind of person. It is a skill. A trainable skill. One that, once developed, changes how you experience everything in your life. Imagine moving through life without constantly feeling triggered. Imagine being able to hear criticism without feeling attacked. Imagine being in situations where others lose control, yet you remain composed, observant, and intentional. That level of calm is not weakness, it is power in its purest form. Because when you cannot be easily disturbed, you become difficult to manipulate. When you are not controlled by anger, you make better decisions. And when your emotions are stable, your life becomes stable. In this video, you're going to learn 6 deeply transformative habits rooted in Stoic philosophy that will completely change the way you respond to people and situations. These are not quick tips or surface-level advice. These are mental frameworks that require practice, awareness, and discipline. But once they become part of you, they will reshape your entire reality. You will stop reacting impulsively. You will stop carrying unnecessary emotional weight. You will stop giving people control over your peace. And here's what you need to understand before we go any further. This is not something you try once and forget. This is something you commit to. Because the version of you that is calm, unbothered, and mentally strong is built through repetition, through awareness, and through daily effort. Most people will hear this and move on with their lives unchanged. But if you actually apply what you're about to learn, you won't just feel different, you will become different. So as you go through this, don't just listen. Pay attention. Reflect. Question your current reactions. Because by the end of this, you won't just understand why you get angry. You'll understand how to stop letting it control you completely. 1. Accept that you can't control people, only your response. One of the biggest reasons you feel anger, frustration, or emotional disturbance is because, deep down, you believe people should behave according to your expectations. You expect respect when you give respect. You expect loyalty when you are loyal. You expect understanding when you communicate clearly. And when people fail to meet those expectations, something inside you reacts. You feel wronged. You feel disrespected. You feel like something unfair has just happened to you. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your expectations are not reality. They are just mental standards you've created, and the world is not obligated to follow them. People will act based on their own level of awareness, their own experiences, their own insecurities, and their own priorities, not yours. Someone might disrespect you not because you deserve it, but because they lack discipline. Someone might disappoint you not because you trusted wrongly, but because they are inconsistent by nature. Someone might misunderstand you not because you communicated poorly, but because they are not capable of understanding at your level. And when you expect them to behave differently, you create a gap between reality and expectation, and that gap is where anger is born. Stoicism forces you to confront this reality head-on. It teaches that there are only two categories in life: what you can control and what you cannot. And when you really break it down, people fall entirely into the second category. You cannot control their words. You cannot control their actions. You cannot control how they feel about you, how they respond to you, or how they choose to treat you. Trying to control these things is like trying to control the weather. It's a battle you will lose every single time. And yet, most people spend their lives doing exactly that, getting frustrated over things that were never within their control to begin with. But here's where your power actually lies: your response. That is the one thing no one can take from you unless you give it away. You may not control what happens, but you always control how you interpret it, how you internalize it, and how you react to it. And that changes everything. Because the moment you shift your focus from controlling people to controlling yourself, you stop being a victim of circumstances and start becoming the authority over your own emotional state. Think about how many times you've let someone ruin your mood. Maybe it was a comment, a tone, a certain behavior, and suddenly your entire day shifted. Not because of what they did, but because of how you reacted to it. Now imagine if, in that same situation, you chose a different response. Instead of reacting emotionally, you observed. Instead of taking it personally, you detached. Instead of escalating, you stayed calm. The situation might be the same, but your experience of it would be completely different. That's the power of response. And understand this clearly: choosing not to react is not weakness. Most people think strength is in reacting, in defending themselves instantly, in proving a point. But real strength is restraint. It's being able to feel the impulse to react and still choosing not to. It's being able to stay grounded when someone else is trying to pull you into chaos. Anyone can lose control. That's easy. But maintaining control when you're triggered, that's discipline. That's power. So instead of going through life asking, "Why are people like this?" start asking a better question. "Why am I letting this affect me?" That question shifts responsibility back to you. It forces you to examine your reactions instead of blaming external factors. Because at the end of the day, people will always be unpredictable. They will say things you don't like. They will act in ways you don't agree with. That will never change. But what can change is how much influence they have over your inner world. When you truly accept that you cannot control people, you stop trying to. And when you stop trying to control them, you stop getting emotionally attached to their behavior. That's when anger begins to lose its power over you. Because now, instead of reacting automatically, you respond intentionally. Instead of being controlled, you are in control. And that shift alone, just that one habit, can change your entire life. 2. Stop taking things personally. One of the most destructive habits you can carry through life is the tendency to make everything about you. Not because you're arrogant, but because your mind is wired to interpret situations through a personal lens. Someone speaks in a certain tone, and you assume it's directed at you. Someone doesn't acknowledge you, and you interpret it as disrespect. Someone criticizes something you did, and you feel like they're attacking who you are. And without realizing it, you begin to carry emotional weight that was never yours to carry in the first place. The truth is, most of what people do has very little to do with you. People are driven by their own thoughts, their own struggles, their own insecurities, and their own internal battles. Someone might be rude not because of you, but because they're stressed, frustrated, or lacking emotional control. Someone might ignore you not because they don't value you, but because they're distracted or dealing with something you know nothing about. Someone might criticize you not because you're inadequate, but because they see the world through their own limited perspective. But when you take these actions personally, you attach meaning to them, a meaning that often leads to anger, insecurity, or resentment. And here's where it becomes dangerous. The moment you take something personally, you give it power over you. You allow someone else's words or actions to penetrate your emotional state. It's no longer just something that happened, it becomes something you feel. Something you replay in your mind. Something that affects your mood, your energy, and sometimes even your decisions. And the worst part is, the other person often has no idea they've impacted you this deeply. While you're carrying the weight of what they said or did, they've already moved on with their life. Stoicism teaches you to detach from this pattern by seeing things as they are, not as you interpret them. It pushes you to separate events from meaning. An event happens, that's neutral. But the meaning you attach to it, that's where the emotional reaction comes from. And if you can control the meaning, you can control the reaction. Imagine someone insults you. The automatic reaction is to feel disrespected, maybe even angry. But pause for a moment and look at it differently. What does that insult actually represent? Is it a fact about you, or is it an expression of their mindset? More often than not, it's the latter. It's a reflection of their character, their emotional state, and their level of awareness. And if that's the case, why should you internalize it? Why should you carry something that doesn't belong to you? This is where you need to shift your identity from being a sponge to being a mirror. A sponge absorbs everything. It takes in every comment, every negative energy, every opinion, and holds on to it. That's how most people live. They walk around carrying emotional residue from every interaction they've had. But a mirror is different. A mirror reflects, it doesn't absorb. It allows things to come and go without holding on to them. That's the mindset you need to develop if you want to remain unbothered. When you stop taking things personally, something powerful happens. You become emotionally independent. You no longer rely on people's behavior to determine how you feel. Compliments don't inflate your ego, and insults don't break your confidence. You become stable, grounded, and consistent, regardless of what's happening around you. And that kind of stability is rare. Most people are constantly reacting, constantly shifting based on external input. But when you detach, you operate from within, not from what's happening outside. This doesn't mean you ignore everything or become passive. It means you become selective. You choose what deserves your attention and what doesn't. You evaluate situations logically instead of emotionally. And most importantly, you protect your inner peace from unnecessary disturbances. So the next time something happens and you feel that emotional reaction building up, pause and ask yourself, is this really about me, or am I making it about me? That one question can break the pattern. It can create distance between you and the situation. And in that distance, you'll find clarity. Because at the end of the day, the less you take personally, the less control people have over you. And the less control they have over you, the more peaceful your life becomes. 3. Practice pausing before reacting. If you pay close attention to most of your emotional mistakes, things you said that you regret, reactions that escalated situations, decisions made out of anger, you'll notice a common pattern. They all happened too fast. There was no space between what happened and how you responded. It was automatic, instant. almost like you weren't even in control. And that's exactly how most people live their lives, not through conscious decisions, but through emotional reflexes. Something triggers them, and they react without thinking. No awareness, no evaluation, just impulse. And that impulse is what keeps them trapped in cycles of anger, conflict, and regret. Stoicism introduces a simple but extremely powerful concept, the pause. That small gap between stimulus and response is where your power lives. It may seem insignificant, but it changes everything. Because when you pause, even for a few seconds, you interrupt the automatic reaction. You create space for awareness. And in that space, you gain the ability to choose your response instead of being controlled by your emotions. Think about how anger works. It's fast, intense, and demanding. It pushes you to act immediately, to say something, to defend yourself, to prove a point. It convinces you that reacting right now is necessary. But most of the time, that urgency is an illusion. What feels like something you must respond to immediately is often something that would lose its power if you simply delayed your reaction. When someone says something that triggers you, your first instinct is to respond instantly. But what happens if you don't? What happens if you pause, take a breath, and observe what you're feeling instead of acting on it? That emotion, as intense as it feels, begins to weaken. It loses its grip on you. And suddenly, what seemed like a big deal doesn't feel as urgent anymore. That's the power of slowing down. Pausing is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about understanding them before you act on them. It's about recognizing that just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to express it immediately. You can feel anger without reacting in anger. You can feel disrespected without responding aggressively. You can feel triggered without losing control. But that only becomes possible when you give yourself time. Most people fear the pause because they think it makes them look weak. They think if they don't respond immediately, they're being passive or allowing others to take advantage of them. But in reality, the opposite is true. The person who reacts instantly is predictable, easy to manipulate, easy to provoke. But the person who pauses is controlled, calculated, and difficult to read. That's the person who holds the real power in any situation. When you develop the habit of pausing, your entire presence changes. You become calmer, more composed, and more intentional. People notice that you don't get easily triggered. You don't escalate situations unnecessarily. You don't say things you'll later regret. And over time, this builds a reputation around you, someone who is stable, someone who is disciplined, someone who cannot be easily shaken. But understand this clearly, this habit doesn't develop overnight. It requires practice. At first, you'll still react impulsively. You'll still say things you wish you hadn't. But the more you consciously remind yourself to pause, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, that pause becomes your default. It becomes automatic. And once that happens, you've taken a major step toward mastering your emotions. So the next time you feel triggered, don't rush to respond. Pause. Breathe. Observe. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And is reacting immediately the best choice? That moment of awareness is where everything begins to change. Because in a world where most people react without thinking, the ability to pause is not just a skill, it's a superpower. 4. Lower your expectations of people. One of the hidden sources of anger that most people never question is expectation. Not just any expectation, but the silent, unspoken belief that people should behave in a certain way simply because you would behave that way. You expect people to be as loyal as you are, as respectful as you try to be, as consistent as you think they should be. And when they fail to meet those expectations, it doesn't just disappoint you, It frustrates you. It irritates you. Sometimes, it even feels like a personal betrayal. But what you fail to realize is that the problem is not always their behavior. It's the standard you assumed they would live up to. This is where Stoicism forces you to adopt a much more realistic and, at first, uncomfortable perspective. It teaches you to see people not as you want them to be, but as they actually are. Because the truth is, people operate based on their own level of awareness, their own values, and their own priorities, not yours. Just because you value honesty doesn't mean someone else won't lie. Just because you are consistent doesn't mean someone else won't be unreliable. Just because you show respect doesn't mean someone else won't be disrespectful. And when you expect them to act like you set yourself up for constant disappointment. Now, this doesn't mean you should walk through life assuming the worst about everyone or becoming negative. That's not the goal. The goal is clarity. It's understanding that human behavior is unpredictable and often flawed, so you don't attach your emotional stability to it. When you lower unrealistic expectations, you remove the shock factor. You stop being surprised by things that are actually common in human nature. And when you're no longer surprised, you're no longer easily disturbed. Think about how much of your frustration comes from phrases like, "I didn't expect that from them," or "They shouldn't have done that." Those statements reveal something important. You had an expectation, and reality didn't match it. That gap between expectation and reality is where emotional disturbance begins. But what happens when you reduce that gap? What happens when you stop assuming people will always meet your standards? You become prepared instead of reactive. You observe instead of assume. Lowering expectations doesn't mean you tolerate poor behavior or allow people to treat you however they want. That's a misunderstanding. What it actually means is that you stop being emotionally affected by their behavior. You still set boundaries. You still decide who deserves access to your time, your energy, and your life. But you do it from a place of clarity, not emotional reaction. Instead of getting angry, you adjust your distance. Instead of arguing, you withdraw your attention. Instead of trying to change people, you change how much influence they have over you. And this is where real power begins to show. Because most people waste energy trying to fix others, trying to explain themselves repeatedly, trying to force understanding where there is none. But when you lower your expectations, you stop chasing what isn't there. You stop investing emotionally in people who have already shown you their patterns. You accept what is, and then you decide your next move accordingly. There's also a level of peace that comes with this mindset. When you expect less, you appreciate more. Small acts of kindness feel more genuine. Loyalty stands out more clearly. Respect becomes something you recognize, not something you demand. And instead of constantly feeling disappointed, you start to feel more grounded and stable because your emotions are no longer tied to unpredictable outcomes. So instead of going through life expecting people to meet your standards, start observing who they consistently show themselves to be. Believe patterns, not promises. Pay attention to actions, not words. And most importantly, stop letting your expectations control your emotional state. Because the less you expect from people, the less they can disturb your peace. And the less they disturb your peace, the more control you gain over your life. 5. Focus on what truly matters. One of the biggest reasons you find yourself constantly irritated, angry, or emotionally drained is because you are giving importance to things that, in the grand scheme of your life, don't actually matter. In the moment, everything feels significant. A comment someone made, a small act of disrespect, a minor inconvenience, a delay, a disagreement. Your mind zooms in, magnifies it, and suddenly it feels like something worth reacting to. But if you step back and look at it from a wider perspective, most of these things are insignificant. They don't contribute to your growth. They don't affect your long-term goals. And they don't deserve the level of emotional energy you're giving them. Stoicism teaches you to constantly zoom out, to look at your life from a broader lens instead of being trapped in the intensity of the moment. Because when you do that, you start to realize how much of your anger is misplaced. You start to see that you've been investing your time and energy into things that don't deserve it. And more importantly, you begin to understand that every time you get emotionally involved in something trivial, you are sacrificing energy that could have been used for something meaningful. Your energy is one of your most valuable resources. You wake up each day with a limited amount of it, and how you choose to spend it determines the quality of your life. But most people waste this energy reacting to things that don't move their life forward. They argue over opinions. They get upset over things they can't control. They dwell on situations that are temporary. And by the end of the day, they feel drained, not because they did something meaningful, but because they allowed small, irrelevant things to consume them. Now ask yourself this: how many of the things that made you angry last week still matter today? How many of those situations are still relevant in your life right now? Very few, if any. And yet, in those moments, they felt important enough to disrupt your peace. That's the trap. Your mind convinces you that everything deserves your attention, when in reality, very little does. When you start focusing on what truly matters, your priorities shift. You begin to value your time, your goals, your growth, and your peace more than temporary emotions. You become more selective with what you react to. Not everything gets your attention. Not everything gets a response. And definitely not everything gets your emotional investment. This doesn't mean you become careless or indifferent to everything around you. It means you become intentional. You choose where your focus goes. You decide what is worth your energy and what is not. You understand that engaging in unnecessary conflict, drama, or negativity only pulls you away from what actually matters in your life. Think about the person you're trying to become, the goals you're trying to achieve, the level of discipline, focus, and consistency required to get there. Now compare that to the energy you spend reacting to small things. It doesn't align. You cannot build a focused, disciplined life if your emotions are constantly being pulled in different directions by things that don't matter. This is why Stoicism emphasizes perspective. It reminds you that life is bigger than the moment you're currently in. That most problems are temporary. That most situations are not as serious as they feel. And that your peace should not be easily traded for things that hold no long-term value. So the next time you feel yourself getting triggered, pause and ask a simple but powerful question. Will this matter in a week? A month? A year? And be honest with yourself. Because most of the time, the answer will be no. And once you realize that, it becomes easier to let go. Because at the end of the day, your life is shaped by what you choose to focus on. If you focus on distractions, your life becomes scattered. If you focus on negativity, your life becomes heavy. But if you focus on what truly matters, your life becomes intentional, calm, and aligned. And when your focus is right, your emotions naturally follow. 6. Train your mind daily. The biggest mistake most people make when it comes to emotional control is thinking it's something you can learn once and then automatically master for life. They watch a video, read a quote, feel inspired for a moment, and believe they've changed. But then life happens. Someone triggers them. A situation doesn't go their way. Pressure builds. And suddenly, they're back to reacting the same way they always have, angry, impulsive, and emotionally unstable. Not because they didn't understand the concept, but because they never train their mind to apply it consistently. Stoicism is not just something you understand, it's something you practice every single day. Because your mind, just like your body, responds to what you repeatedly do. If you constantly react emotionally, you strengthen that habit. If you constantly allow anger to control your actions, it becomes your default. But if you train yourself to pause, to reflect, to detach, and to respond with intention, that becomes your new standard. And over time, it stops feeling like effort and starts feeling natural. Think about it this way. No one goes to the gym once and expects to be in shape forever. It doesn't work like that. Strength is built through repetition, through consistency, through showing up even when you don't feel like it. Your mind operates the same way. If you want to become someone who is calm, unbothered, and emotionally disciplined, you have to condition your mind daily to operate at that level. This means taking time to reflect on your behavior. At the end of each day, ask yourself honest questions. Where did I react emotionally today? What triggered me? How could I have handled that situation better? This kind of reflection builds awareness. And awareness is the first step to change. Because you cannot control what you are not aware of. It also means preparing your mind before situations happen. Most people only think about emotional control after they've already reacted. But Stoicism teaches you to anticipate challenges, to mentally prepare for difficult people, unexpected situations, and moments that will test your patience. When you expect these things, they lose their ability to surprise you. And when they don't surprise you, they don't control you. Another important part of training your mind is controlling what you feed it. The content you consume, the conversations you engage in, the environments you place yourself in, all of these shape your mindset. If you constantly surround yourself with negativity, drama, and emotional chaos, it becomes much harder to stay calm and grounded. But if you intentionally expose yourself to ideas, perspectives, and disciplines that promote clarity and control, your mind begins to align with that standard. And here's something most people don't want to hear. This process is not comfortable. There will be moments when you feel the urge to react, and everything inside you wants to respond the old way. There will be times when staying calm feels unnatural, when holding back feels difficult, when choosing discipline over impulse feels like a struggle. But that discomfort is part of the process. It's a sign that you are breaking old patterns and building new ones. Over time, something powerful begins to happen. Situations that used to trigger you no longer have the same effect. Things that once made you angry start to feel insignificant. You begin to notice that you are thinking more clearly, reacting less impulsively, and handling situations with more control. And at that point, emotional discipline is no longer something you're trying to achieve, it becomes part of who you are. But it all comes down to consistency. Not what you do once, not what you do occasionally, but what you do every single day. Because the version of you that is calm, focused, and unshakable is not built in moments of inspiration, it is built through daily discipline. So don't just listen to these ideas and move on. Apply them, practice them, reflect on them. Because the more you train your mind, the less power external situations will have over you. And eventually, you reach a point where no matter what happens around you, you remain steady within. And that is what true control looks like. Conclusion. At this point, you need to understand something very clearly. What you've just learned is not normal behavior. It's not how most people live. Most people go through life reacting to everything. They wake up and immediately get pulled into other people's energy, other people's opinions, other people's actions. Their mood depends on how they are treated. Their peace depends on how things go. Their emotional state is constantly shifting because it is built on unstable ground. And because of that, they never truly experience control over their own life. But what you've just been exposed to is a completely different way of operating. A way of living where your peace is not negotiable. Where your emotions are not easily influenced. Where your reactions are not automatic, but intentional. And that shift, from reacting to responding, is what separates those who are controlled by life from those who are in control of it. If you really think about it, every single habit you've just learned is pointing to one thing: responsibility. Not responsibility for what people do, not responsibility for what happens around you, but responsibility for yourself. Your thoughts, your reactions, your interpretations. Because the moment you take full ownership of that, you stop being a victim of circumstances. You stop blaming people for how you feel. You stop waiting for things to be perfect before you feel at peace. And instead, you create that peace from within. But here's the part most people won't do: applying it. It's easy to listen to something like this and feel motivated. It's easy to agree with it while you're calm, while nothing is testing you. But the real test comes when someone disrespects you. When something doesn't go your way. When you feel that familiar urge to react, to defend yourself, to get angry. That's the moment where this either becomes real, or it remains just another video you watched. Because mastering these habits is not about understanding them, it's about practicing them when it's hardest. When your emotions are high. When your ego is triggered. When reacting feels justified. That's where discipline is built. That's where control is developed. And that's where you start separating yourself from the majority of people who never take that step. Imagine what your life looks like when you actually live this way. You don't overthink every situation. You don't replay conversations in your head. You don't carry unnecessary anger or frustration. You move with clarity. You respond with intention. You protect your energy without feeling guilty. And most importantly, you are no longer easily shaken by things that used to control you. That is a different level of living. And once you reach that level, people will notice it. Not because you're trying to show it, but because it's rare. In a world where people are reactive, emotional, and easily triggered, someone who is calm, grounded, and unbothered stands out without saying a word. That kind of presence commands respect. Not by force, but by consistency. But don't get it twisted, this is not a one-time decision. You don't wake up tomorrow and suddenly become unbothered by everything. This is something you build, day by day, situation by situation, choice by choice. Every time you choose to pause instead of react, you're building it. Every time you refuse to take something personally, you're strengthening it. Every time you focus on what truly matters, you're reinforcing it. And over time, it compounds. Until one day, you realize something has changed. The things that used to disturb you don't have the same effect anymore. The situations that used to trigger you feel smaller. The reactions that used to be automatic are now controlled. And at that point, you're no longer trying to be calm, you are calm. You're no longer trying to be unbothered, you've become unbothered. That's the goal. So don't just leave this here. Don't just listen and move on. Take one habit, just one, and start applying it immediately. Then build from there. Because the version of you that is disciplined, calm, and mentally strong is not created by chance, it's created by intention. And if you're serious about becoming that version of yourself, someone who is in control, someone who cannot be easily shaken, someone who moves through life with clarity and power, then this is the kind of mindset you need to keep feeding your mind. So make sure you stay around people, ideas, and content that push you in that direction. And if this is the kind of growth you're committed to, then you already know what to do. And if you're serious about becoming that version of yourself, someone who is in control, unbothered, and mentally strong, then this is the kind of mindset you need to keep feeding your mind every day. If you want more practical strategies like these, if you want to truly master your emotions, and if you're ready to level up your life and mindset, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that bell icon too, so you never miss videos that will help you grow, stay disciplined, and remain unshaken no matter what life throws at you. Because the journey to becoming unbothered isn't a one-time thing, it's daily, intentional, and consistent. And the insights on this channel will guide you step by step, habit by habit, to build the kind of calm and control most people never even get close to. So subscribe, stay tuned, and start applying these habits today, because the version of you that's calm, unbothered, and powerful is waiting to be built.